Hi, I'm Molly, and today I'm going to show you how to sew together our Whalemina Stuffie pattern, which is this adorable little whale. You can find this pattern as a PDF download on our website. It will come with your pattern pieces, as well as an instructional booklet, which will show you how to lay out your fabric, how to cut, and all of the steps to get you to a finished stuffie. So looking at our patterns here, if you are taping together a pattern for the first time, you can also see our video on how to put together a PDF pattern and how to cut out your fabric. We have 3 pattern pieces. This is the Whalemina body. This tells you to cut 2 in fabric, so underneath we have 2 pieces cut. This is the Whalemina fin. You're cutting 4 in fabric, so we have 4 fins cut. This is the Whalemina tail pattern, and we have 2 pieces cut from the tail pattern. In addition to your fabric, you're going to need 2 buttons, 2 embroidery needles threaded with embroidery floss, and of course, your stuffing. We're just using polyfill for this. So first thing we're gonna do is to mark our pattern pieces with our notches. So you can see here, after we've cut our notches, we have to mark 3 other spots on the body piece, and those will be the X's that mark the placement of the eyes for buttons. So you can see on the whale, there's a button on either side for its eyes. We'll mark those, and then we'll also mark the circle that marks the blowhole, which we'll use embroidery floss for. So to mark each of those spots, I'm going to take my pin here, and I'm going to just pierce it through the paper, and use my chalk pencil to make a little dot. I'll do the same on this side, and then the same for the blowhole. All right, and then I'll just go in and kind of make them a little darker with an X. You want to make sure at this point, if you have 2 different color fabrics, that you have marked the fabric that you want to be on the head of the whale, not on the belly. So we're using the dark blue right now for the head. All right, so these 3 spots are marked, and now I'm gonna go ahead and start sewing both my buttons and my blowhole. I can also put the pattern pieces aside from now because we've got everything notched and marked. So we're just working with fabric. Okay, so first thing I'll do is sew on my buttons. I have a embroidery needle pre-threaded with some embroidery floss. To start, I'm going to go in from the back of the fabric through the X. And I've got a knot at the end of this, so it won't pull through. Pull through, go in 1 hole. I'm going to do mine in an X pattern, so I'm just finding the hole across from the one I went through, and I'll do that at least 1 more time on this side for the same 2 holes, and then I'll go through there we go. So you can see I'm just forming that X pattern. All right, so to finish off my button, I'm gonna go ahead on the back and we're gonna make a loop. So we always say this is you're making a balloon and then you're popping the balloon. Just pull, hold down my knot, do it 1 more time. I make a balloon, pop the balloon from the back, hold down my knot and pull. Now I'll do the same for the other eye. And I have to remember to retie a knot for my thread. Okay, so we're working on this eye now. And I've decided to do 2 different colors for my eyes, but I think it's kind of cute that way. You could also pick 2 different sizes. This is a really good way to use like buttons that you have around the house that have fallen off of your shirts, or those buttons you get when the extra buttons you get when you buy something and you never use them. Flip that over, tie my knot again. So make a balloon, pop the balloon, pull, there you go. All right, and I will just store that needle for right now on my pin cushion. And now I'm going to make my blowhole. So you can see right here what the blowhole looks like. It's made up of a few different strands of floss with a knot right at the bottom so that it doesn't pull through. So on this one we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I think I'll repeat that on the whale I'm making now. So again, I'm starting with a knot at the bottom of my thread, but this time I'm going to come through the bottom again. And then when I come up, I'm gonna make a knot again. So I make my balloon, I pop the balloon. Oops, let's do that again. I make a balloon, I pop the balloon, and I pull through, pull down my knot, and pull my tail. And we can cut these all to make them even right at the end, but I'm just gonna kind of just cut about that much. And it looks like that's about 2.5 inches. So I will make another knot. I'm gonna do this, repeat this 5 times. So I make a knot. I'm gonna kind of go around in a little circle. So pull this through, make another knot. And I can use this one to figure out how long I want the other one to be. And I make another knot. I always like doing these sort of hand sewing bits on patterns. It can kind of relax you. So I'll cut this one. I'm gonna start using the big kid scissors since I'm allowed to. All right, so I have 3 done, and I should be able to get 2 more out of this floss. So there, that's my 4th one. Now that I'm doing this blue, I kind of wish I had chosen something crazy like yellow or red. But that's the beauty of these projects, is that you can make them again and again and make them different each time. So I think my next whale will have a bright yellow spout. Okay. All right. And we can just kind of check the haircut here. I'm gonna give her a little trim. All right, so now I have the top of the whale prepared. I can set this aside for a moment and move on to creating my fins and my tail piece. Those are gonna be constructed in pretty much the same way. This is version B of the pattern. So if you're working with version A, we have a different video for version A. In version A, instead of using fabric for the fins and the tail, just uses felt. So it's not quite as much sewing. Let's start with the tail. I want to take the 2 tail pieces that I've cut and put them right sides together. So right sides together, this is my right side, this is my right side. I want them to touch. So the right sides are touching on the inside. And I'm going to go ahead and pin every side except for this short flat edge. So I'm pinning all of the curved edges of the tail. The reason that I'm not going to pin that straight edge is because I'm not going to sew it. So I'm going to leave this edge open when I sew, and then I'm going to use that to flip the whale, the tail piece of the whale right side out. So just to kind of remind myself that I'm not stitching through that section, I like to use double pins. So I just put 2 pins really close to each other, almost like they're in an X, and that tells my brain to stop sewing at that point. Okay. All right, we're gonna turn on the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch with a 1/2 inch seam allowance from the one set of double pins over to the other, and I'm gonna be sure to pivot at my corners. If you are sort of new to seam allowance and pivoting, you may want to just put an X where you need to pivot to remind yourself. Okay. All right, so I've just got a little piece of tape here. I'm going to place it on the 1/2 inch seam allowance line, just so that I have a mark that's more visible for me. So when I'm sewing, I'm going to be lining up the cut edge of the fabric with the inside of that tape edge. That's going to allow me to get a 1/2 inch seam allowance easily. Take my double pins out, and here we go. I'm going to remember to back stitch at the start. We have a video on back stitching if you're new to back stitching. And I'm just following that 1/2 inch line. When I get to the corner, I'm going to pivot. So I sink my needle in, I lift my foot up, I turn. Sink my needle down, lift my foot up, and turn. And then take out those last pins and remember to stop there doing a back stitch. All right, so let's put those pins back on our pin cushion. Right, the whale fin is sewn on every edge except this short straight edge, so I still have an opening here. Before I flip things through, I'm going to clip my corners and clip notches into the curve of the whale tail. So across, and then I'm just gonna taper away. So let me do that again so you can see it close up. I go across, so I'm close to my stitching, but never ever through my stitching. We don't want to lose all that nice work you just did. And then into this corner, I'm going to clip a triangle. Again, not through my stitching, just to it. And then I can just make these little triangles. They're gonna help me turn the tail a little bit more easily. All right, here I go. This is the fun part. I'm flipping my tail. I don't think this part ever stops being fun. So I've just got kind of a jumbled mess now. I'm gonna take my fingers and just kind of press out my corners. If you need a little help, you can use something blunt, like a pen cap or a chopstick or a pencil, and just get that corner poked out. We like our whales to have sharp tails. All right. So I'm gonna leave this like this for now. I will go ahead and press it with the iron when I'm done with my fins, but right now I'm just gonna move on to my fins so that I can press everything at the same time. So with the fins, I do the same thing. I'm going to take 2 sets. So this is one fin, top and bottom, and then this is the other fin, top and bottom. I want to put them right sides together, so right sides are touching. Same here. I'm going to pin, just like we did with the tail, I'm gonna pin all the way around except on the short straight edge. I'm gonna leave that open to flip. Same with this one, so. And again, marking double pins to remind myself not to go past that point. Okay. So same with this one. And now I sew from double pin to double pin on both set of fins. Okay. 1/2 inch seam allowance again. So I'm lining up the cut edge with my 1/2 inch, turning on my machine, making sure I backstitch. And remember, if you need those turning points, you can mark those with your chalk pencil ahead of time. All right, so now we have our 2 fins sewn. I've already flipped one. Clipped and notched it and flipped it, and now we're going to clip and flip this one. So I want to take my corners and just cut them across, taper, taper, across, taper, taper. All right, and then I'll reach in through the opening and flip this out. This is one thing where the littler your fingers are, the easier it is. Okay, so I have my 2 opposite fins and my tail. I'm gonna go to the iron right now and just give them a very quick press to get them flat, and I'll be back. Once you have your tail and your fins flipped and pressed, it's time to attach them to the body of the whale. So we're working with the head of the whale now. We've set the belly of the whale aside for later. I'm going to place these on the outside of the piece just the way that I want them oriented when the whale is finished. So for example, for what I'm doing, I want the dark side to be up in the end, just like it is on this finished whale. If I wanted the light side to be up, I would have placed them like this. All right, so I'm going to locate all of my notches. This is when they come in handy. So I have one notch that we've cut on the side of the whale body. It's going to correspond with the notch that I've cut in the center of the fin. So I want to take this fin, flip it, so that the right side of the dark side of the fin is facing the dark side of the whale body, and I'm just aligning the notch to the lower notch. I'm going to pin, and then I want to do the same with this side. Notch, find my notch here, line those up. And then the same exact thing for the tail. So we've got a notch down here, a notch in the tail, and I will put those right sides together. We want everything to be facing inside. In order to attach these, I'm going to use what's called a basting stitch, which I'll explain in a second, to stitch just right across parallel to the cut edge of the fabric through all these layers, and the same with my fin. So I'm sewing across and across. I'm going to sew just under my 1/2 inch seam allowance. And in order to do a basting stitch, so a basting stitch is just a stitch that holds things in place until you attach another piece. So you can have it be a longer stitch. We're gonna move our length to a 4 for a basting stitch. And I'm just going to put each one of these through. You don't have to do a crazy back stitch. When you baste, you don't even have to do a back stitch at all. I am gonna do a back stitch just so it's a little bit more secure at the end when we have the whale completed. Just in case anyone's really pulling on these fins or the tail. So now I'll do the same with my fins, my 1/2 inch, just a little bit under 1/2 inch. And then my last one here. All right, so now I have my tail and my fins attached to the body. It will look like this once it's all done. So cute. Once you have your fins attached, it's time to attach the belly of the whale to the main part of the whale. So we want to take these two pieces and put them right sides together. Right side is up, right side is down. Before I do that though, I'm going to tuck the edges of my whale in and just set them with a pin. This is going to be so that you don't accidentally, this would be so sad, so you don't accidentally sew the edges of your tail into the side of your whale. So we just tuck that over, tuck this one over, just keep it nice and flat. And I'm just gonna insert a pin. So the pin is going through the back too, just so that those don't get sewn into your side seams. All right, so I'm going right sides together. Now, what I'm going to do here is pin every single edge except for my cut out edges. So I'm not pinning inside of these 4 90-degree corners. And I want to leave an opening in my pins on one of these long diagonal edges, but not where there's a fin. So I don't want to leave an opening here. I want to leave my opening here. It can be about 3 inches. So could be about maybe, you know, the width of your palm. So I'm going to do double pins here to start. That's going to mark my opening. Feeling here for my fin. All right, and then I'm just pinning around the rest of the piece, and again, not pinning through my cutouts. We have all of our edges pinned here except for our cutouts. And now we're going to stitch with a 1/2 inch seam allowance on every edge, again, except for those cutout edges. You may need to mark your seam allowance if you're sewing with a child at home. If they're younger or less experienced, it can be hard for them to get this 1/2 inch seam allowance just using the plate. So if you need to do that, you can use a ruler. Line up your 1/2 inch edge because that's our seam allowance. Right now, just for visibility on the camera, I'm using a Sharpie. You should really never use a Sharpie on fabric because it will bleed through. What you want to use at home is either a chalk pencil or just some regular chalkboard chalk. All right, so I'm just doing this again for the purpose of having this show up on the camera for you to see. All right, so what I have here is this side marked with my stitch line, this side marked with my stitch line, this is marked with my stitch line, this is marked up until my double pins, and then again from my double pins down. I am not pivoting and sewing on the corners, not sewing here. All right, so let's go ahead and start on this edge. So I finish with the back stitch there. Move on to so I didn't sew there. All right, so I'll remove my pins. And now it's time to box my corners. And this is the part that adds that sort of three-dimensional lift to the front and the back of the whale here so that it stands up and has some shape to it. All right, so now with all of my edges sewn except for these cutouts, I can reach in, and this part's a little bit tricky, so I'm gonna try to show it really slowly. But what I'm gonna do is slip my fingers in between this cutout where it's still open and try to flatten that corner so that now the cut edges are forming a straight line. And I just kind of want to do my best to get that flat. And then I'm just going to pin that down. I'm going to go to the machine and sew right across, 1/2 inch away from the cut edge. Put one more pin. So again, I'm going to use my Sharpie, which we don't recommend using at home, but my 1/2 inch mark is about there, so that's where I'm going to sew. So I've sewn from edge to edge parallel to my cut edge, and now I'm going to do the same on the other 3 corners. So I take this top corner, I pull it open and try to match my cut edges up. Now I'll do the same with those tiny back corners. So I open it up, fold it flat, and I'm going to sew right across this back edge. So these little corners are more difficult than, just because it's a smaller space, they're more difficult than the back. Putting there, and I'm just sewing right across. Okay, so we now have all of our corners boxed, and it's time for the big reveal. So we're going to flip our Stuffie out through that opening on the side. So we left that opening because we were so clever. Whoop, snip some threads here. This is also the step where you can go in and cut any threads you have. All right, here we go. So drum roll, please. We're going to flip our whale through the side. And now remember that we left that pin in there for the tail. So you can take that pin out. And, so cute. All right, so she's starting to take shape. And these are those box corners that we just did. Aren't those cool? The same in the back. Whew. Okay, so now we have a whale, sort of a deflated one. What we need to give this some life is just some stuffing. So this is everybody's favorite part. You want to take just a small clump of stuffing at a time. It gets a little overwhelming if you try to put this big ball of stuffing all in at once. And then just try to put it, the stuffing sort of as forward as you can get it, and just keep going back in. So just a handful at a time. And you can see she's starting to smile over there. With stuffing, you always want to overstuff. So the stuffing will kind of go down over time. So it's better for her to be a little more plump at the start than to be at all flat or deflated. When we have kids in the studio, the stuffing is like gold. So we have a strict one student at a time will buy the stuffing bin, or else it turns into mayhem. Okay, so I think we even need more stuffing than that. And I'm just pushing it all forward. Okay, so that feels pretty good to me. Okay, so here, the last thing I have left to do is just to close up that opening that we left, and I'm going to do that with a whip stitch, and I'll show you how to do that in just 1 minute. We're ready to now close up the opening that we left in the side of Whalemina, and we're going to do that using a whip stitch. So I have another embroidery needle threaded with embroidery floss. I'm going to pinch the opening so that the cut edges of the fabric tuck inside, and I'm just going to secure this with a couple of pins. If you're doing this with a child at home, you can, if they're the ones sewing, you can kind of pinch this for them while they do the whip stitch instead of using pins. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start down here, and that little bit of stuffing we can cut off at the end, but I'm going to go inside and come out. So I've gone in through the center, and then I'm pulling out, and then I'm just going to sort of tuck the tail of my thread inside so that it disappears. Okay. And then a whip stitch is a pretty simple stitch. I'm just always going to go in the same side every time and out the other side every time. So I'm always wrapping the thread around to the front. When you get to a pin, you can take it out. One thing that sort of a hindsight is 2020 thing, but when you're making your opening, you want to make it big enough that obviously you can flip the project through. But the bigger you make it, the more you have to whip stitch. So if you're someone that doesn't really like the hand sewing part of it, you might want to make your openings on the smaller side. And I've just got a few more here till the end. I'm going to tie it off with a knot. All right, so that's my last one. I'm just going to go in again. So just in the same spot, circle around. And then I'm going to go in again. I've got this loop here, and I want to go through the loop. So I'm putting my needle back through the loop and pulling. And then I can make a balloon, pop the balloon from the back, hold down my knot, just pinch it and pull the thread. And then if you want to hide the tail of your thread, you can go back in with your needle, come out somewhere else in the pattern, just give it a little bit of a tug, and you can cut the thread, just pull it and cut it, and it'll just pop right back in. It's like it never happened. And now we have our finished Whalemina stuffing. We're so excited to see what you make at home. Please remember to tag us on Instagram at SewShopJunior so that we can see your own Whaleminas. Thank you.